Humans are terrible liars. Like, impressively terrible. And somehow, when caught cheating, whether on a test, in a video game, or in life, they don't just lie. They create entire cinematic universes of nonsense. We're talking excuses so absurd, so creatively stupid, that you almost want to give them points for effort. Almost. Here are 50 of the wildest ones ever recorded. 1. Coming home with someone else's lipstick smeared across your collar is the ultimate amateur move. But one husband decided to skip the usual denial and went straight into writing a Hollywood screenplay. When his wife demanded answers, he looked her dead in the eye and claimed he had just administered emergency CPR to a dying birthday clown. Why was the clown dying? Apparently, his unicycle suffered a high-speed blowout on the interstate. The sheer, multi-layered stupidity required to invent a dying freeway clown to cover up an affair is practically high art. If you can deliver that lie without laughing, you belong in politics. 2. Group projects are basically just early training for carrying dead weight in the corporate world. During a final presentation, a professor finally called out the one student who literally contributed nothing to the assignment. Instead of apologizing, the kid proudly announced that his designated role was never to do the actual research or writing. He was strictly there to serve as the ideological and spiritual anchor of the team, providing crucial metaphysical oversight. That is a truly spectacular way of saying you slept for 3 weeks while everyone else panicked. Unsurprisingly, his professor was not spiritually enlightened and handed him a failing grade. 3. Missing a massive deadline usually results in a boring excuse about computer crashes or sudden stomach bugs. One author, who was several months late delivering his manuscript, decided to bypass reality entirely. He sent his furious publisher an urgent message explaining that his creative muse had been violently kidnapped. The culprits were apparently a militant rival faction of abstract poets who were demanding a massive ransom of unwritten metaphors before they would release his inspiration. If you are going to use writer's block as an excuse to keep your advance money, you might as well turn your laziness into a tense hostage negotiation. 4. Getting caught with an active dating profile while living with your significant other is usually the end of the line. Yet, one cornered boyfriend tried to pivot into playing the ultimate neighborhood hero. He swore to his girlfriend that he was performing a selfless public service by acting as a protective filter for her single friends. His noble mission was to actively swipe and chat to make sure those women didn't match with any absolute creeps. You really have to admire the absolute delusion here. How exactly do you vet these guys? By taking them out for romantic dinners just to be absolutely sure? 5. Cheating the high-occupancy vehicle lane is a national pastime, but it usually involves a plastic mannequin wearing sunglasses. A lone driver in California took things to a morbid new level when Highway Patrol pulled him over for cruising in the carpool lane. To avoid the massive fine, he aggressively pointed at a decorative urn strapped into the passenger seat. He passionately argued that his dearly departed grandmother was technically riding shotgun, and her ashes should legally count as a second human being. The officer was reportedly so disturbed by a man arguing traffic laws with a jar of dust that he just walked away. 6. Political corruption is nothing new, but the corporate jargon used to cover it up is evolving beautifully. A local official was caught on hidden camera happily accepting a heavy briefcase stuffed entirely with cash from a contractor. Once the footage hit the evening news, his public relations team went into overdrive. They released an incredibly serious statement declaring that the money was absolutely not a bribe. Instead, they officially classified it as an unsolicited, kinetic-based campaign contribution. That is an incredibly fancy, multi-syllable way to describe dirty money-changing hands in a dark parking garage, and Wall Street should definitely take notes. 7. The competitive chess world is absolutely ruthless, and players will do basically anything to gain a slight edge. During a high-stakes tournament, a rising prodigy started emitting a strange buzzing sound right in the middle of a complex match. Suspicious officials demanded a physical inspection and found an electronic device heavily taped to his back. The kid didn't even flinch, insisting it was merely a medical posture corrector that randomly vibrated to deliver gentle mindfulness prompts. It was truly a miracle of modern science that his moments of deep spiritual mindfulness perfectly matched the exact moves recommended by a chess supercomputer. 8. Board games have destroyed more happy families than actual legal inheritance disputes. At the absolute peak of a vicious Monopoly night, the designated banker caught his brother-in-law slipping $500 bills from the tray. Rather than apologize for ruining family game night, the thief went full courtroom lawyer. He confidently argued that because the board features railroads and municipal utilities, the entire game operates strictly under international maritime law. Therefore, the local house rules and the banker's authority held absolutely no legal jurisdiction over his financial acquisitions. His brilliant legal defense immediately resulted in him being physically thrown out the front door. 9. Trying to scam the Internal Revenue Service is a bold move, but doing it with a household pet is next-level bravery. A small business owner triggered a massive federal audit after officially listing his golden retriever as a senior corporate partner to get tax write-offs. Facing down a stone-faced government agent, the man defended his furry executive, claiming the dog was essential for providing critical, morale-boosting emotional support to the staff. The unimpressed auditor simply looked over her glasses and asked for the dog's 9-digit social security number. The guy completely froze before mumbling that he was currently doing the paperwork. 10. Art school is a magical place where a complete lack of talent can easily be disguised by using enough pretentious vocabulary. A university instructor walked up behind a student and caught him literally taping a photograph to a bright window to trace the exact outlines onto his canvas. Without missing a single beat, the cornered student looked back and stated he was absolutely not cheating. He claimed he was merely exploring the profound philosophical duality of mechanical artistic reproduction in a modern society. The professor clearly did not appreciate this deep intellectual journey, rewarding his philosophical exploration with a massive, mathematically perfect 0. 11. Keeping track of lies is hard enough without inviting quantum physics into your love life. A local player found his carefully constructed double life destroyed when both of his serious girlfriends accidentally showed up to his birthday gathering at the exact same time. Trapped in his own living room, he nervously explained that he was actually practicing a highly advanced state of quantum monogamy. He argued that his romantic commitment existed in multiple simultaneous probabilities, and their sudden physical presence simply collapsed the waveform. Unsurprisingly, this brilliant scientific lecture was immediately followed by 2 full glasses of red wine collapsing right onto his face. 12. At what point do you stop being furious at a cheating partner and start looking up local psychiatric facilities? A woman found a secret burner phone taped under her boyfriend's bathroom sink. Caught completely off guard, his brain just fully blue-screened. He swore on his life that the phone wasn't for another woman. He was merely holding it for a neighborhood squirrel who was currently being aggressively blackmailed by a ruthless street gang of local pigeons. I mean, sure, the animal kingdom is rough out there, but you really have to wonder how those pigeons were sending threatening text messages without having any thumbs. 13. Faking a severe medical issue to get out of lifting heavy boxes at the office is a time-honored corporate tradition. One employee milked the sympathy of his entire department by wearing a massive restrictive neck brace for 3 straight weeks. The scam unraveled when his supervisor drove past a local park and spotted him serving aces in a highly aggressive tennis match. The next morning, the supposedly crippled athlete told Human Resources he was secretly beta testing a high-intensity cervical resistance trainer for a secretive Swedish sports science startup. Sadly, his employment status did not survive this rigorous international testing phase. 14. Breaking the unwritten laws of party snacks is a very quick way to become a social outcast in your neighborhood. Everyone watched in sheer horror as a guy aggressively plunged his half-eaten tortilla chip straight back into the communal guacamole bowl. When the angry host loudly called out this biological terrorism, the offender did not back down. He raised his hands and proudly announced he was performing a holy reverse baptism for the snack. He claimed he was spiritually cleansing the corn of its processed corporate sins before consuming it. Despite his deep religious devotion to appetizers, he was never invited to another barbecue. 15. Facing an intervention for a house overflowing with junk is a stressful experience. But rebranding your psychological problem is a brilliant deflection tactic. Confronted by her exhausted children over the mountains of trash blocking the hallway, a mother calmly adjusted her glasses. She stated she was absolutely not a hoarder, but rather the unpaid, visionary curator of a living museum dedicated to forgotten domestic artifacts. Pointing to a dangerous, 6-foot tower of damp newspapers from the early 2000s, she proudly welcomed her family to the periodical's pavilion. You have to respect a woman who turns a massive fire hazard into a cultural institution. 16. Corporate embezzlement usually involves fake vendors or padded travel expenses, but one executive decided to get completely mystical with his fraud. Accounting flagged a mysterious $5,000 expense report paid out directly to a clairvoyant consultant. Called into the office, the executive kept a completely straight face while defending the charge. He argued the psychic was absolutely vital for providing mission-critical, precognitive market analysis. Apparently, she accurately forecasted their entire quarterly earnings based entirely on Saturn's transit through Capricorn. It is genuinely hilarious that a massive corporate strategy relied on astrology, yet the stars completely failed to warn him he was getting fired. 17. Teenagers possess an incredible ability to lie their way out of anything, combining zero actual life experience with absolute unearned confidence. After a priceless antique vase was found smashed to pieces on the hardwood floor, a father interrogated his teenage son. The kid did not blame the family dog or a clumsy friend. He confidently explained that the ceramic spontaneously exploded due to a highly localized sonic boom triggered by a supersonic, low-flying bat that had breached the living room airspace. How does a parent even begin to argue with a child who casually invents aviation anomalies to cover up playing indoor football? 18. Professional athletes caught with banned substances in their bloodstream have historically terrible excuses, usually blaming tainted protein shakes or contaminated lip balm. A disgraced professional cyclist decided to throw his own household pet under the bus to save his career. Facing a massive suspension from the sport, he swore to the media that he simply got confused in his kitchen and accidentally swallowed his beagle's high-performance allergy medication. It really makes you stop and wonder exactly what kind of intense, underground athletic competitions this guy's poor beagle was secretly training for in the backyard. The sports committee did not buy the canine defense. 19. Lying on your resume is practically an American tradition at this point, but most people at least keep the lies within the realm of physical possibility. One job candidate proudly listed fluency in 5 languages, including Mandarin. The hiring manager, who actually grew up in Beijing, decided to test him right there in the interview. The guy froze for a second, then started producing completely random syllables with dramatic tonal shifts. When the manager stared at him in disbelief, the candidate doubled down, insisting he spoke a rare pre-modern oral dialect that predates written Chinese by roughly 3,000 years. Mainstream speakers, he explained, simply wouldn't recognize it. The interviewer recognized something, though: the exit door. 20. There is no greater nightmare in adulthood than receiving a text message asking you to help a buddy move a heavy sofa up 3 flights of stairs. To avoid this horrible fate, one man sent a legendary cancellation text. He informed his buddy that he could not assist because his holistic chiropractor found his aura to be critically misaligned. He warned that if he lifted any cardboard box weighing over 10 pounds, it could instantly trigger a catastrophic, full-blown spiritual prolapse. Honestly, when a friend hits you with a medical emergency that sounds like an exorcism, you just have to respect the hustle and hire professional movers. 21. The internet is full of armchair historians desperate for attention and stolen valor. A guy dominating a military forum was finally exposed when several actual veterans proved his elaborate, cinematic combat stories were completely stolen from old movies. Refusing to admit he was just a bored guy with a keyboard, he took a wild pivot. He stated he was not technically lying, but rather unconsciously channeling the latent, genetic ancestral memories of his great-uncle who supposedly flew bomber planes in the 1940s. So he wasn't a fraud sitting in a basement. He was just conducting a digital seance through his Wi-Fi connection. 22. Waking up to discover you sent a dozen completely unhinged text messages to your ex at 3 in the morning is a universal panic. One guy decided that blaming cheap tequila was way too mainstream. When his confused ex demanded an explanation the following afternoon, he swore he hadn't touched a single drop of alcohol. Instead, he claimed his cellular device had been temporarily possessed by the wandering spirit of a mischievous and frankly quite lonely 18th century poet. Sure, buddy. It totally makes sense that a colonial ghost came back from the dead just to text "you up" 6 times in a row. 23. Being left on red for 6 hours is infuriating, especially when you know the person is just sitting on their couch doing absolutely nothing. A frustrated woman finally snapped at her partner for constantly ignoring her messages all weekend. He immediately took the intellectual high ground, scoffing at her anger. He insisted he was actively practicing a rigorous, philosophical regimen of digital minimalism to successfully decolonize his fragile attention span from the oppressive tyranny of instant gratification. He wanted her to know he wasn't just being an inconsiderate jerk playing video games. He was a brave pioneer fighting a war against modern technology. 24. Finding parking at a crowded mall brings out the absolute worst in humanity, but stealing a protected spot requires a special level of arrogance. A guy driving a massive lifted truck parked right over the blue lines and was immediately cornered by a furious security guard. The driver did not apologize. Instead, he argued that while his legs worked perfectly fine, he was actually severely emotionally handicapped that afternoon because he had watched a wildly depressing animated children's movie the night before. Unbelievably, the parking authority did not accept cartoon-induced trauma as a valid medical condition, and they hit him with a massive fine. 25. The emotional support animal loophole has officially spiraled completely out of control in modern society. A woman returned to her tiny one-bedroom city apartment only to find a very confused, live farm goat standing on her rug. When she started screaming, her boyfriend told her to calm down and respect the medical process. He declared the beast was his federally certified support companion, specifically trained in the therapeutic processing of deep existential dread through a system of aggressive, targeted headbutting. It is incredibly difficult to maintain a serious romantic relationship when your partner's mental health strategy involves getting violently rammed in the stomach by livestock. 26. Bringing a secret lover into your own home under false pretenses is a bold strategy that almost never works out well. A husband told his wife that his rugged old college roommate, Dave, was crashing in their guest room for the weekend. The wife was understandably shocked when Dave walked through the front door and turned out to be a stunning blonde woman. Cornered in the kitchen, the husband actually claimed that in the obscure, highly specific dialect of her ancestral mountain village, Dave was a beautiful traditional female name. Apparently, this legendary village has a total population of one lying idiot. 27. Slacking off on company time is an absolute art form, especially during major sporting events. A furious regional manager burst into a conference room to find his entire sales department eating hot wings and screaming at a televised football game. The quick-thinking team leader stood up, straightened his tie, and boldly lied to the boss's face. He claimed they were currently conducting a real-time ethnographic study of peak human performance under extreme pressure, all to develop a groundbreaking motivational white paper for the company. The only thing that study produced was a massive pile of chicken bones and a stern warning from human resources. 28. Artificial intelligence is advancing rapidly, but apparently, basic office equipment is getting in on the revolution too. A remote worker completely blew past a critical project deadline, causing a massive headache for his boss. When asked for an explanation, the guy skipped the usual excuses about bad internet routers. He claimed his plastic keyboard had suddenly developed a rudimentary form of sentience overnight and was violently refusing to type any business emails as a silent protest against perceived corporate capitalist oppression. His manager politely suggested that his newly enlightened keyboard might truly enjoy protesting from the absolute bottom of a local dumpster. 29. Everyone has accidentally taken a company pen home, but treating the supply closet like a free grocery store is a different game entirely. Security caught an employee shoving 40 boxes of staples and expensive printer ink into a massive duffel bag. Trying to save his job, the thief claimed he wasn't stealing corporate property. He argued he was bravely liberating these heavily disenfranchised resources to fulfill a humanitarian mission, aiming to equip a severely underprivileged tech startup. That desperate startup turned out to be his own garage, and his noble mission was just printing out hundreds of pages for his fantasy football draft. 30. Financial infidelity is a major cause of divorce, particularly when it involves massive subwoofers and surround sound. A wife almost fainted when she opened the mail and discovered an $8,000 credit card charge for a massive home theater system. Confronting her husband in the living room, he completely refused to admit it was a frivolous toy. He confidently spun it as a brilliant strategic investment in tangible, non-liquid physical assets, strictly designed as a protective hedge against global market volatility. I am absolutely certain his wife felt completely financially secure while listening to action movies shaking the walls at maximum volume. 31. The sheer desperation of a high school student during a midterm exam leads to some truly spectacular mental gymnastics. A teacher quietly walked down the aisle and caught a kid stretching his neck out like a giraffe to stare directly at his buddy's test paper. The kid didn't even flinch. He told the teacher he was simply conducting a rigorous, real-time peer review of his friend's academic choices to actively prevent him from making a terrible mistake and failing. It was a beautiful display of pure brotherhood. He just wanted to make sure they both locked in the exact same disastrously wrong answers. 32. Admitting you ruined dinner is tough, but doubling down on a culinary disaster requires genuine clinical delusion. A man who promised his wife a romantic home-cooked meal completely incinerated a roast chicken, setting off every smoke detector in the house. Instead of ordering a pizza in shame, he proudly slammed the blackened, unrecognizable chunk of carbon onto the dining table. He boldly declared the bird was absolutely not burnt, but rather artisanally prepared using a highly complex post-industrial smoke infusion technique. You really have to applaud a guy who tries to sell third-degree culinary arson as an exclusive, high-end dining experience. 33. The restaurant business is brutal, and fake internet reviews are the ultimate weapon of survival for terrible cooks. A struggling cafe owner was caught using a dozen fake accounts to post glowing, 5-star praises about his own terrible sandwiches. When a local blog exposed him, his public response was completely unhinged. He claimed these were not fake reviews at all, but actually leaked, pre-written testimonials bleeding over from a much more successful alternate timeline. He argued he was simply trying to align his current failing reality with a predetermined, multiversal outcome. You know your food is absolute garbage when you have to rely on quantum mechanics to sell a panini. 34. Local food competitions are taken incredibly seriously, especially in the cutthroat, aggressive world of neighborhood chili cook-offs. A reigning champion was permanently disgraced when a judge caught him hiding behind a tent, violently shaking a cheap can of store-bought beans straight into his competition pot. Refusing to step down, the fraudster claimed he was actually a pioneer of science. He insisted he was actively conducting a massive double-blind study on the psychological placebo effect of perceived authenticity in the modern culinary arts. He was immediately stripped of his apron, though a university should probably reach out to fund his groundbreaking canned meat research. 35. Hiding a paper trail is rule number 1 of keeping a secret, but leaving a credit card receipt in your jeans is rookie behavior. A furious wife pulled a crumpled piece of paper out of the laundry, proving her husband bought a very expensive seafood dinner for 2. He didn't panic or blame a late business meeting. He stared into her soul and blamed his deeply evil twin brother, Bartholomew. He seriously claimed this identical menace periodically escapes from a secret government underground facility just to frame him and ruin his marriage. You really have to wonder if this imaginary Bartholomew at least tipped the waiter. 36. Lying about your age at a bar is practically a rite of passage, but usually you try to pass for older, not a decade younger. A woman aggressively flirting her way through a crowd insisted she was 29. The bouncer remained deeply skeptical and demanded her identification, which brutally exposed her actual age as 42. Completely unfazed by documented government facts, she rolled her eyes and explained that 42 was just her biological Earth age. Her true spiritual and emotional energy, she argued, was comfortably hovering in the 20s. The bouncer, clearly lacking any real cosmic depth, handed the plastic back and pointed her to the exit. 37. Politicians absolutely love spending taxpayer dollars, especially when there is an open bar and expensive catering involved. A corrupt city manager got absolutely roasted by the local newspaper for draining public emergency funds to throw himself an incredibly lavish 500-guest birthday bash. His press secretary did not back down, issuing a statement that strongly denied it was a party. They officially classified the event as a mandatory multi-agency stress simulation exercise strictly designed for urban emergency preparedness. Apparently, the horrifying emergency they were simulating was a sudden, catastrophic shortage of expensive imported caviar and chilled champagne on a private yacht. Truly vital work for the community. 38. Nothing is funnier than catching a fiercely annoying dietary crusader completely breaking their own strict rules. A loud, militant vegan who constantly lectured his friends about eating plants was spotted alone in a diner, absolutely demolishing a massive, greasy double bacon cheeseburger. When confronted with photographic evidence, he furiously wiped the barbecue sauce off his face and deployed the ultimate defense. He claimed it was actually a heroic rescue burger. He argued the kitchen was about to throw it in the garbage, and his deep moral compass simply couldn't allow the sacrifice to go to waste. A true humanitarian, saving the earth one hypocritical bite at a time. 39. Trying to cheat on an advanced math exam is terrifying, but doing it with the screen brightness turned all the way up is just asking for destruction. A professor sneaked up behind a college sophomore who was blatantly staring at a glowing smartphone buried under his calculus test. The kid rapidly locked the screen and delivered a breathtaking excuse. He confidently claimed he was definitely not looking up complex formulas, but merely utilizing a highly calibrated light meter application. His stated goal was to ensure the classroom's ambient lighting was perfectly optimized for his deep academic focus. Shockingly, the optimal lighting did not save him from academic probation. 40. Marathon runners are an intense breed, but some prefer the thrill of victory without the agonizing pain of actually running. A local competitor blew past the finish line an entire hour ahead of the elite pack. Suspicious officials checked his required tracking monitor and realized he had casually skipped a brutal 5-mile uphill section of the city course. The guy crossed his arms and argued he was not cheating the system. He told the judges he was bravely disrupting the outdated, linear paradigm of traditional race theory by implementing a much more efficient, multi-vector navigational strategy. Basically, he invented corporate speak for taking a massive shortcut through a fast food parking lot. 41. Video game hackers will do absolutely anything except admit they actually suck at playing the game. During a high-stakes online tournament, administrators permanently banned a player whose crosshairs were magically locking onto targets through solid concrete walls. Instead of logging off in shame, he typed out a furious defense, claiming he wasn't using illegal software at all. He was simply an undercover academic, conducting a complex sociological experiment regarding the community's emotional reactions to perceived superhuman abilities. That is exactly like robbing a federal bank just to see if the security guards are paying attention. The only thing he proved was how fast an account can get permanently deleted. 42. Strolling into the corporate office 3 hours past your scheduled start time usually requires a solid story about a multi-car pileup or a sudden dental emergency. One guy completely bypassed normal logic when his furious manager demanded answers. He claimed his morning commute was suddenly halted by a magical flock of pigeons flying in a mathematically perfect golden ratio Fibonacci sequence. He stated he felt a profound, overwhelming civic duty to pull his sedan over and personally document this miraculous anomaly of nature. The absolute best part of this poetic, deeply moving excuse is that this guy worked in a windowless basement doing mind-numbing data entry. 43. Local pub trivia nights are brutal war zones disguised as casual social events, and people will sell their souls for a $20 gift card. During a heated movie quiz, one guy at the back table was absolutely dominating obscure questions while suspiciously staring at his crotch. The angry host walked over and discovered a smartphone perfectly angled to stream Wikipedia answers. Unfazed by the massive public humiliation, the guy announced the glowing screen was simply a private, closed captioning service designed specifically for the culturally curious. The whole bar erupted in laughter, and his only reward was being permanently banned from all future trivia battles. 44. Living in an apartment complex means dealing with insane neighbors who apparently practice professional bowling at midnight. After enduring hours of loud, violent, rhythmic banging against the shared drywall, a furious tenant finally pounded on the offender's door. The sweaty guy who answered swore he wasn't throwing a party or doing anything inappropriate. He deeply apologized, explaining he was merely practicing the incredibly ancient and noble art of artisanal furniture exorcism. He claimed the negative demonic spirits trapped inside his cheap Swedish bookshelf were proving to be particularly stubborn that evening. You really can't argue with a man fighting a holy war against particle board. 45. University chemistry labs are stressful, mostly because one wrong drop of liquid can ruin 3 weeks of actual academic work. A teaching assistant caught a desperate student physically peeling the stickers off glass beakers and swapping them to magically produce the exact, perfect chemical reaction needed for a passing grade. When threatened with expulsion, the student calmly adjusted his safety goggles and lied. He stated he absolutely wasn't faking data, but rather aggressively simulating data reproducibility under unpredictable, chaotic field conditions. Apparently, these extremely rigorous field conditions included looking a professor dead in the eye and lying like a seasoned career criminal. 46. Committing to a strict diet requires massive willpower, but finding an airtight excuse to break that diet requires pure creative genius. A husband walked into the kitchen at 2 in the morning to find his supposedly carb-free wife aggressively destroying a massive slice of strawberry cheesecake by the glow of the refrigerator light. She didn't drop the fork in shame. She swallowed the bite and declared she was acting out of pure compassion, bravely rescuing the dairy product from the tragic fate of its rapidly approaching expiration date. You really have to admire a woman who turns a midnight sugar binge into an act of profound culinary philanthropy. 47. Golf is a sport built entirely on an honor system, which means it is absolutely packed with middle-aged men lying about their scores. During a country club tournament, a guy was caught using a metal file to shave down the dimples on his golf ball to artificially reduce wind drag. When a club official found the sandpaper hidden deep in his expensive bag, the cheater panicked. He claimed the abrasive paper was strictly prescribed by a doctor for maintaining his personal grip health, and the shaved ball was simply an experiment in do-it-yourself aerodynamics. Shockingly, the club board did not appreciate his scientific contributions and immediately revoked his membership. 48. A woman at a high-end department store was caught red-handed by loss prevention swapping price tags on designer items, trying to buy a $900 Italian leather jacket for the clearance price of a polyester scarf. When security pulled her into the back office, she didn't even blink. She calmly introduced herself as a freelance retail pricing analyst and insisted the store had made a critical markdown error that she was selflessly correcting on their behalf. She argued she was technically saving the company from a devastating inventory discrepancy. The security team was so deeply moved by her generous consulting work that they escorted her straight to the parking lot and banned her for life. 49. Software engineering is mostly just stealing other people's brilliant ideas from the internet and praying the program actually runs without crashing. But one junior developer got sloppy and pasted an entire massive block of code directly from a public forum into a secure corporate project. When the senior engineers flagged the blatant plagiarism during a review, the kid tried to use technical jargon to save his skin. He arrogantly insisted he was merely benchmarking open-source community throughput against their internal system architecture. It sounded very impressive, right up until the manager walked him to the elevator to permanently benchmark his exit from the building. 50. Wearing dark sunglasses at a casino poker table usually just means you want to look intimidating, but modern technology has completely ruined the bluff. Security guards rushed a high-stakes table after realizing a player's mirrored aviators were actively reflecting a tiny glowing heads-up display calculating every single mathematical odd in the room. When they confiscated the hidden camera gear strapped to his chest, the guy smiled and played the tech guru card. He told the massive bouncers it was simply a harmless augmented reality application designed strictly for his own personal, spiritual growth. The casino decided to dramatically augment his reality by physically throwing him out into the street. 50 excuses, not a single good one. And here's what bugs me. Statistically, at least one person watching this right now has used an excuse just as bad, maybe worse. So here's the deal. Drop your best, or your worst, cheating excuse in the comments. Real or made up doesn't matter. The one that gets the most likes wins absolutely nothing. Subscribe, because next time, the excuses get even dumber. And hit like, it costs nothing, and my algorithm needs therapy.